Hello, everyone. Mad Dog here. I hope you all have had a good week. My week wasn't too terrible, for the most part. Forgive my voice if it's a little off today. I had an unfortunate experience where where I screwed up my throat the other night or the other morning for reasons that I won't go into here. Let's just say it was my own damn fault, and leave it at that. Um, Anyway, didn't have a whole lot I wanted to talk to you about today, although I did have a couple things. I wasn't. I'm not going to read a chapter from my novel every week. Probably be every other week. It's going to take a while to get through it, and you can always tell me to stop. I don't know if I'll complete the whole thing. I may just sample another chapter or two. But today, I wanted to talk about. I finally did get around to seeing The Force Awakens. Um, the last most recent Star Wars movie. It was very much an enjoyable movie. There was a lot of fun stuff to be said about it. The acting was very well done. Of course, it looked great on the screen. Um, I did have some issues with it. I do think it's one of the weaker Star Wars movies. I don't think it's the weakest, but I think it's one of the weaker ones. Um, Too much stuff happened in it for no real good reason, except it was cool. Um, and it undid too much of stuff that was set up in The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. It just seemed like that we all of a sudden were doing things to make the fans happy instead of actually telling a good story, which it can work. Actually, it can work really well where you make the fans happy and tell a good story at the same time. But when you're focusing too much on just making the fans happy and keeping it traditional, um, so that the canon police aren't out there saying, "Oh, you know, you can sacrifice a lot um, by catering too much to what the fans want." Um, and I think that this movie definitely its quality suffers because of that. It's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's a fun watch. It's a good Star Wars movie, and I think that it wraps up the story pretty well. If a little, like, okay, this happened, why? But would I recommend it? Would I recommend it? Yes, I would, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. It's a Star Wars movie through and through. I mean, there's lots of good Star Wars stuff in it, um, and it's just a fun action movie, action sci-fi movie. Period. But it is certainly one of the weaker Star Wars movies. In my opinion, the only Star Wars movie so far that has come close to being better than, or close to being as good as, The Empire Strikes Back was Revenge of the Sith. And even it had its problems, although they weren't as bad as for the other two prequels, um, which I don't think really needed to be made. I think we could have had one to two prequel movies, and it would have told Darth Vader's story and Anakin's story much better than the three movies we have did. Um, Excuse me, drinking this. Not bad stuff. Good. Well, this isn't great for me, but so that's my take on that. Um, the other review I want to touch on. And sometimes I'll combine these because I'm not an in-depth reviewer. I'll just give you my impressions and tell you whether or not I recommend it or not. Tell you what I thought was cool about it without being too spoilery. Um, and what I didn't like so much about it without being too spoilery. I finished reading this week The Black Prism, the first book in the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. It's a book that I've been wanting to read for quite a while. I follow a YouTuber named Daniel Green. Please look at his channel if you like my kind of stuff. I'm sure you'll like his kind of stuff. He's a lot more polished than I am, but I think you'll like his stuff. Um, anyway, he just goes on and on and on about the Lightbringer series. So I wanted to read it before I heard him talk about it, but him talking about it made me want to read it even more. And so I finished reading The Black Prism, which I read in just a little over 2 weeks, which is pretty fast for me. Um, but it is a very, very good book. Um, it had some problems at the beginning, and I'll go over those problems right now. At the beginning, I found his two protagonists, Kip Guile and Gavin Guile, had a lot of things going for them that I didn't personally like. Gavin, he's my favorite character in the whole book, and he was from the beginning. But in the beginning of the book, he's Superman. You know, he's slicker. He's slicker than shit. Forgive my language, but he's too slick. You know, everything works for him. Everything, and you know he's got some conflict, but they don't really seem that big a deal. You know, he doesn't seem fully three-dimensional at the beginning. That changes over the course of the book a great deal. He learns humility. Things happen that put him in situations he doesn't want to be in. He begins to learn that he really isn't as bad a man as he thinks he is, really. And he's not a monster. He's not a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. He's a good guy, but he's not nice. But he learns humility. He still can do great things. He's still pretty much Superman. He's what's called the Prism, which means that he's the best magic user in the whole world. But by the end of the book, he's become more human, which I really appreciated. I'm really looking forward to seeing where his character goes. I know he goes through a lot of stuff in the next four books, and I'm really looking forward to going through that journey with him. The other protagonist, Kip Guile, who is related to Gavin, I'll say that much right now, without giving too much away. Is he Gavin's son? He is presented as such, but he is not. But I'm not going to go into any of that for you. When the book first starts, Kip's whiny. He whines about everything, and it gets kind of annoying. Now, yes, he's got a lot of reason to whine because a lot of bad things happen to him at the beginning of the book. But he's whiny, he's whiny, he's whiny. But even in the early part of the book, he shows signs of being able to do more than whine. That he has the same kind of smug, smart mouth as Gavin does. It's just not quite as well developed. It's because he hasn't discovered his inner strengths yet, which he does. And once he starts discovering his inner strengths, starts being able to power through things, he begins to believe in himself more. Although by the end of the book, he still doesn't believe in himself completely, he begins to believe in himself more. And as he begins to believe in himself more, as he begins to realize he's stronger than he thinks he is, he stops being as whiny and becomes more, again, just like Gavin, becomes more three-dimensional. And I'm looking forward to reading what happens with him. He has some of the most exciting stuff in the whole book happen to him in the last third, the big battle at the end. Kip does a lot, and I like that. Gavin could have taken center stage, but Kip takes center stage through a big part of the last third of the book, and I really like that. Again, this is a very entertaining read. Very good first book in the series. I definitely would recommend it to just about any fantasy reader. I would recommend this book to. But that pretty much hits on my problems, but also some of the things I like. The magic system is incredibly well developed. It's not laid out, except maybe if we read.